Welcome to the 700 Club. Vladimir Putin's plan to take over Ukraine may be hitting the wall. Russian troops are suffering major defeats, and NATO is expanding on Russia's border.
Putin is now threatening retaliation over NATO's expansion. He's moving nuclear weapons to Russia's border with Finland. Jenna Browder reports from Washington.
Finland and Sweden are moving forward with their bids to join NATO, a process taking anywhere from 4 months to a year. Publicly, Russia's Vladimir Putin has said it's no big deal, but his actions suggest otherwise. The two countries announcing plans to join the alliance. Finland's admission would put another NATO nation on Russia's border. In the past, Putin has called the alliance's expansion into Eastern Europe a threat and has threatened retaliation. But when the president of Finland delivered the news in a phone conversation, he said Putin took the news calmly and didn't repeat those threats.
What he said doesn't mean that you shouldn't be all the time quite well aware and follow up what really is happening.
Putin may be talking softly, but he's swinging a big stick. This video showing Russian trucks carrying nuclear weapons to the border with Finland. On the ground in Ukraine, in the ruined city of Mariupol, some 260 wounded fighters holed up in that steel mill have been allowed to leave and taken to Russian-controlled territory. The Ukrainian government is working to secure the release of hundreds more, though it would mean they would become prisoners of war. It comes as Ukrainian troops continue to score more victories, retaking Kharkiv and reaching the Russian border. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky congratulating those troops.
Дуже вам вдячний від всіх українців, від кожного, від себе, від моєї сім'ї.
The UK now estimates Russia has lost 1/3 of their ground combat forces. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
The United States and our allies and partners are focused on giving Ukraine as strong a hand as possible on the battlefield and at any negotiating table so that it can repel Russian aggression and fully defend its independence and sovereignty.
And the flood of Ukrainian citizens fleeing the fighting is now starting to reverse. The country's border service saying more people have returned to the country than left in recent days. And in another blow to the Kremlin, McDonald's now says it's leaving Russia. The company announcing it plans to sell off all of its business there. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Well, George Thomas joins us now. He was in Ukraine covering the war for the first 3 months and is now safe and back home. So, George, tell us, what's the morale like in Ukraine? What's sustaining the people?
Yeah, it's incredible, Gordon. I mean, you know, in the initial opening salvo hours of the war, the anticipation, at least from the U.S. intelligence, was that within 72 hours, Kyiv would be encircled. The Russians would control the capital city. The Zelensky government would be decapitated. Well, what are we, day 84 into this war, into Russia's 3-day war? And listen, it's unbelievable. From Lviv, I went from Lviv, crisscrossed the entire nation all the way to Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine, and the morale is so high because just imagine, you know, the Russians were in Bucha and Irpin and Hormostel and Boryodansk, and to imagine that the Ukrainians, with the help of the United States and other NATO allies, were able to, in essence, defeat the world's second largest army, push them back. And today now we're getting these reports that they've pushed them back all the way to the Kharkiv, to the Russian border, bordering Kharkiv. It's incredible. Absolutely amazing story.
Well, I've got to ask, can Ukraine actually win this? I mean, nobody expected them to last this long, but now it looks like it might even be turning. Is there any hope that they could win it?
Yeah, in fact, they are winning, Gordon. I mean, if you look at the efforts they've made in the last 3 months, they've been significant, and no one expected this. My prediction is that not only will Ukraine regain territory that it has lost to Russia since the invasion in on February 24th, but I'm going to predict and say that they are going to reclaim all territory that they lost in the first war back in 2014. Ukraine, including Crimea. And the reason I say that is because the Ukraine of today compared to 8 years ago is very different. They have the military hardware. It continues to flow. The weapons continue to flow in from Poland, from other parts of the neighboring of Ukraine. So the dynamics on the ground have changed significantly. And NATO has said it's going to be open doors from NATO military coming into Ukraine. It's going to be open season for them, and they're going to continue to take the fight to the Russians.
Well, let's talk about one of their defeats. So the fall of Mariupol.
Yeah.
It looks like Russia's concentrating its forces on that coast all the way to the eastern part, the Donetsk region, all of that. So what's the significance there of the fall of that city? If
you look at that map there, Gordon, you look at Mariupol, it's the second largest port for Ukraine. The first one is Odessa. 60% of all the imports coming into Ukraine coming through Mariupol and Odessa. The fact that they've lost today, they've lost Mariupol is significant. Also, primarily because if you look at it, it gives them that land bridge that the Russians have been wanting since 2014 when they annexed Crimea there at the bottom. They had to basically go through the Black Sea. So today, instead of having to ship, for example, precious water that the Crimeans need, now they just need to have a land bridge going straight from Russia all the way down through Mariupol, through Kherson, and down to Crimea. But again, this war is not, we're still in it. And the possibility of the Ukrainians continuing to push the Russians out of Kherson and potentially going after Mariupol and other parts of the Donbass region is very, very possible.
Well, Russia still has a few cards in its deck, and that is nuclear weapons.
Sure.
Ukraine doesn't have that. So what's the significance of Russia deploying nuclear weapons on the border of Finland? And in the event that they really start to have even more losses and are in danger of losing Crimea, would they actually put tactical nukes in and use them?
Yeah. On the issue of Finland, in the near term, no, because, you know, NATO, in essence, gets two very sophisticated military countries in Sweden and Finland. Both countries have been, you know, buying weapons. I mean, they have the Finns have F-35, American F-35 fighter jets on order. They already have the F-18s. They have American defense missiles already deployed. They have even the Israeli Iron Dome deployed. They have about 900,000 reservists, 280,000 of them they can call pretty much on moment's notice. So, you know, this was one of those things where the Kremlin again miscalculated that in order to, you know, by attacking Ukraine, they will divide, they will conquer, they will put fear in countries like Sweden and Finland. Just the opposite has happened, and the morale continues to be high. The nation of Ukraine is united like never before. You know, the thing I kept hearing over and over again these last 3 months, Gordon, is this, that they're fighting for freedom. You know this. They experienced what it was like to live under a totalitarian regime for 80+ years when they gained their independence in 1989, and then they got attacked on February 24th. They don't want to go back. They don't want to live the kind of life that the Russians are experiencing today, and that is what they're fighting for at the end of the day.
Well, last question.
Yeah.
How can we pray for Ukraine? How can we pray for the situation? How can we pray for Russia right now?
Yeah, good question, especially on Russia. You know, people that I've been speaking to, both in Ukraine as well as in Russia, they're saying they're praying for a second wall to come down in Russia, that there would be a spiritual awakening that takes place in Russia. But for the church in Ukraine, they're bold, they're strong, they're continuing to do amazing work. They're all hands on deck from all levels of society. They've joined together, everybody opening their homes, opening their businesses, their restaurants. I mean, you look at what Orphans Promise is doing, crisscrossing the entire nation from Lviv all the way to the eastern part of the country. They're opening up their facilities, helping people in their time of need. I saw it, and it was just incredible to watch in the process. Continue to pray for them, that they would have the backbone, they would have the resources to minister to their people in the midst of what's going on. And the incredible news is that 3 months in, there are more Ukrainians now coming back into the country than those who are fleeing. That is good news for sure. And let me just take this moment, Gordon, to say thank you to the 700 Club family, to the CBN family, and to viewers around the country and around the world who prayed for me these last 3 months. And those prayers kept me safe, kept me alive and kept me strong.
All right, George, thanks for the service, and thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
In other news today, President Biden visits the victims of the shooting in Buffalo, New York. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon, and it is good to have George back. Well, First Lady Jill Biden joins the president today, meeting with families grieving the loss of loved ones after that deadly mass shooting in Buffalo. 10 African Americans died in the attack at the Tops supermarket Saturday. Authorities say the 18-year-old shooter was motivated by racism and set out to kill black people. And there is new information. The shooter spent months planning the attack. ABC News reporting it has obtained a nearly 600-page document showing the assailant visited the grocery store as far back as March and made detailed sketches of the store's layout. He also planned more attacks and listed other targets. Authorities believe the suspect was radicalized by racist ideology on the internet. Darius Pridgeon is the bishop of Bethel Baptist Church and the president of the Buffalo City Council. Monday, he spoke on CBN's Faith Nation about the church's role in confronting racism in America.
We must be honest about the fact that there are still white supremacists that live on our land, and that there are still people who do not like black people and would rather for them to die. And if we don't have the uncomfortable conversations, even when there is not a mass shooting, we will never be able to stand up against racism. And that, to me, is what we have to do, especially those of us who say we believe in Jesus Christ. I keep saying it's hard to talk about Jesus if you don't talk about justice. And at the end of the day, this is a time to talk about justice.
The FBI is investigating the attack as a hate crime. Well, in California, church members came together to mourn for those killed in Buffalo and for the man killed in a shooting at Geneva Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods on Sunday. 5 others were injured in the attack on members of a Taiwanese congregation that meets at the church. Authorities say that shooting had political motivations. The suspect, 68-year-old David Chu, was reportedly upset about political tensions between China and Taiwan. One man, Dr. John Chang, was killed, the sheriff calling him a hero.
Dr. Chang charged the individual, the suspect, attempted to disarm him.
The sheriff and Chang's actions probably saved the lives of upwards of dozens of people. The congregation's pastor also jumped in, hitting the shooter with a chair. Gordon, some quick life-saving thinking there.
Very quick thinking, and we thank God for the lives that were saved by that quick thinking. But we need to underline, thou shalt not kill. We seem to have unleashed this spirit of violence. And you can date it all the way back to Columbine. What is going on in our nation where people are being radicalized and they somehow think they're doing society a favor by killing people? Going into churches and saying, well, I don't like the tension between Taiwan and China, so I'm going to kill you. Going to a supermarket saying, I'm going to kill you because of the color of your skin. This is unbelievable. It should never happen in our country. We need to pray that that which restrains is restored to us, that we have safety in our grocery stores, we have safety in our schools, we have safety in our churches and our synagogues. These hate crimes absolutely have to stop.